Hey there, you are listening to the Traill Happy Box Hour, broadcasting through the facilities of Trent Radio at 92.7 CFFF FM in Peterborough, Ontario, Canada. My name is Amanda Owen, and today we're talking with Valerie Kent and Kirsten Munson. If you're wondering what's happening at the College on the Hill, the JCR is now open for small gatherings or independent study, or maybe you just want to hang out and relax. It's open from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Friday. Be sure to check out the space. And to start off the show today, we're going to play a song. We're going to play Violet by Daniel Caesar. Hope you enjoy. And welcome to the show, Valerie. It's lovely to have you on the Happy Box Hour today.
It's great to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Of course. Very excited to have you here and to talk about your work as an artist. And so, Valerie, do you mind telling listeners where you are from and how that affects your work as an artist?
Well, I was born in Hungary, but I grew up in Canada from a very early age. So Canada and things Canadian are my greatest influences. I studied world art because I've always been interested in art. I read about it, looked at art at every chance I got. So as I'm sure everyone knows, artists are always influenced by other artists, and that's the way it should be.
Very true. Yes, I find myself as an artist as well as I'm influenced by other people's works and what I see and when I go to different galleries and things like that. So I definitely think that's very true, very relatable. And Valerie, where do you find inspiration?
Well, I think everyone is inspired by what they see or feel or experience, but a lot of my inspiration comes from inside me. I spend a lot of time absorbing what I see and thinking of ways in which I can reinterpret it into a new and novel image or object. And then it reflects my own vision and my emotion. This is particularly true if I'm going to paint a realistic landscape or even a very loosey-goosey abstract. So do you not yourself filter reality and ideas through your own psyche?
Yes. Very good. So Valerie, you're mentioning like different artists, different works that are inspiring for you and how that impacts your work. And so who would you say are your biggest artistic influences?
It's really hard to say because I've been painting for over 50 years. But my biggest artistic influences are artists who have a vision of portraying the world in new ways. All of a sudden, from a classical, realistic, super realistic way of looking at things, artists who suddenly just departed from that whole thing. For example, painting through the eyes of a child like Karl Appel or Kandinsky, or all the new movements that happened during the time of the Impressionists, where they started painting light as opposed to painting what they see. And Van Gogh was quite a pioneer too, because he was painting the real life in the countryside instead of the very, very classical images that had been painted up to then. These artists were sort of looked down on because they were not doing what everybody expected art to be.
I like that answer. It gives me a lot to think about later on for sure.
Oh, thank you.
And how has your artistic style changed over time, Valerie? Do you notice there's been shifts in what you like to do or what you're drawn to as an artist?
Yes, definitely. My artistic styles have changed over the years. It's hard to keep the same thing going for over 50 years, as you can imagine. You keep wanting to try new things. That's part of the artistic, creative inspiration. Starting in university, where we were taught straight edge painting and then doing realistic depictions of the world, I do continue to paint what I see. And I really love going outside and painting outside, doing plein airs. But I also paint an altered view of the world. So I focus on creating a world real to me, but focusing on composition, brilliant colors, maybe something that can be described as urban figurative. I made that up. So you'll find it anywhere. But it took me 3 years to develop the style that I use in my marketplace series. I had gone to so many markets around the world. And when you looked at paintings of markets, they all had a great similarity. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something different. And I kept experimenting until I came up with what I do.
It's wonderful. Yeah. You don't really want to fall into some sort of homogenous artistic style. Like it's nice to have your own unique thing that can, carve a different path for yourself. So that's really interesting for sure.
Yeah, one of the things is that not everybody likes it. Not everybody likes new type work. They might be looking for your traditional landscape, but you sort of go with that.
Mm-hmm. It's a choice for sure. And what workshops are you facilitating this fall at Trent University for the continuing education program?
Well, I'm very excited by what we're offering this year. We've got the watercolor tips and techniques, and that's going to be a 6-week program starting October 27th. So many new and wonderful things to do. The one that's new, which is old, that's a funny way to describe it, is the watercolor pouring workshop. It's something that I started doing maybe 25 years ago. Right now, like acrylic pours are super, super hot, but people were pouring watercolors way back when. And so I have built this program. It's just 3 weeks, and it's woods and marsh, and we'll paint 3 images that get to the heart of each painting we pour. So we learn the process. It's so much fun, and we'll all have something very interesting and different because it's serendipity, right? You can't actually design your pour to be exact. It's going to do pretty much what it wants to do, but we will love it anyway. So we're going to do some daisies and some thistles and a pinkish birch tree.
Oh, very exciting.
And then we have another new and wonderful thing, which is to paint abstracts. Now, it may seem easy to just stand in front of a canvas and go, oh, I think I'll paint an abstract right now. But sometimes it's hard to get started and it's hard to decide on what to do. So what I'm going to do is base the three workshop session on various compositional styles. And so at least we have a starting point, knowing what it is that we want to achieve ahead of time. For example, if you have an O-shaped composition or an S-shaped composition, you now know where you want to place various colors and where you want to lead the eye. It just makes it so much more approachable. And it also will give the painters something for their toolkit, because this is something they can draw on for the future and keep painting, of course. That's the idea. And what else do we have? We have a 1 day that is from 7 to 9 on Tuesday, November 2nd, the acrylic lyrical landscape. It's just a one session landscape and kind of a pretty scene. River and leaves and autumn. Nice.
Wonderful. Those workshops sound great. I'm very excited to hopefully maybe register for one myself. Maybe those listening might be interested in registering for workshops too. And if you are, you can go to the Trent University website and search continuing education. And from there, you can find more information about Valerie's workshops.
Ooh, that would be nice. Love to have everyone.
Yes, the more the merrier.
Absolutely.
So Valerie, you were talking a little bit about the workshops, and they all kind of have a different medium that you were working with. But what would you say is your favorite medium to work with?
Ooh, that is so hard to answer. Ending, I love every medium. I love painting, and therefore anything that I use is so apropos. And so if I'm close to home and I'm going outside to paint, then I will take something like acrylic or oil or water mixable oil. If I'm going a far distance, then it depends on the weight and the ease that I have So I would choose watercolor. That's the easiest to move around and to carry the paper, and you could just slip a tiny little kit. They have these tiny, tiny kits that are like 2 inches by 1 inch even, and have the basic 3 primary colors, and you can take that and make beautiful paintings. So it's such a versatile medium. And all the mediums are great in the studios, so then I like that. And then mixed media, which I have been doing for a very long time. And then we combine all of them, and then that makes it so much fun, and adding collage and strange, wonderful things to the paper or the canvas, everything from eggshells to found papers to music sheets, and everything goes.
Oh, yes. The one thing we want to hear, everything goes. Don't
Yep.
want to pick any medium as a favorite. No. So, Valerie, my last question for you, and I'm quite curious to know, is your work is on exhibition all across the world. And could you tell listeners a little more about your work and where they can find it?
Well, every year I belong to the International Artists group, and every year my work is shown in Korea. And even with our restrictions this year, I did have something in Seoul, which was lovely. And then my work is online at valeriekent.com, and it's on my gallery website, and people can come in person to come and see that. I opened it today. It's been closed for 19 months. It's the Cavan Art Gallery, and it has a website, which is cavan-arts.com. It's in Cavan, big surprise. It's in Cavan Arts, Cavan, Ontario. And a little closer to home, there are quite a few of my artworks up at the gallery on the lake. And I think that's Cajun. And it's a lovely visit, and it's a great place to view my artwork and lots of other artwork. It's one of the biggest galleries around the country.
That's so wonderful. Like, it's very cool how your work has been shown in Korea and Seoul and all locally as well. Well, thank you for coming on the Happy Box Hour, Valerie. It was lovely having you, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.
Thank you very much, and I hope to see many of you on the other side of the facing me and doing artwork with the Trent Continuing Education Program.
Thanks, Valerie.
Thank you so much. Take care.
You're listening to the Traill Happy Box Hour, broadcasting through the facilities of Trent Radio at 92.7 CFFF FM in Peterborough, Canada. My name is Megan Ward, and joining us today is Kirsten.
Hi, Megan. Thanks for having me join you tonight.
Yeah, of course. We're super excited. Kirsten is our third interviewer that we've had so far in our grad student interview series, and we're really excited to chat more about her research. So, Kirsten, if you want to take a minute and just sort of introduce yourself to our listeners, go ahead.
Okay, great. I'm a PhD student at Trent in the Environmental and Life Sciences program. I'm supervised by Paul Wilson, who's a professor at Trent, and Jeff Bowman from the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources. And my PhD research looks at conservation questions of Boreal Caribou in Ontario.
Okay, cool. So can you give us more of an overview of what that research actually looks like?
Yeah, sure. So there's actually a lot of different kinds of caribou in Canada, and these different kinds are associated with different habitats or behaviors, and they can actually look quite different from one type to the other. So Boreal caribou, the ones that I study, live in dense boreal forests, and they have a really wide range spanning across most Canadian provinces. The specific populations that I study are found in remnant populations along the islands and shores of Lake Superior, and they're separated from the continuous range of the other boreal caribou by about 150 kilometers.
Wow. Okay. So how many populations of these caribou are actually left in the wild?
So along the Lake Superior range, there's still caribou located on the Slate Islands, which is a small cluster of islands along the northern shore. I also have some historical DNA samples from a nearshore population in Pakasaw National Park, but caribou haven't actually been seen there in several years. So it's likely that they're extirpated from that area, which means locally extinct, unfortunately. There also used to be hundreds of caribou on Michipicoten Island, but wolves made their way onto the island in about 2014, and the predation pressure was too high. So in 2018, 8 of the remaining caribou were transferred to the Slate Islands, which is why there's still a stable population there now, and 4 caribou were moved to a smaller island, which is aptly named Caribou Island. So it's unlikely that there's any caribou left on the Michipicoten Island population anymore now as well, unfortunately.
Wow. Okay, so let me clarify something. You said you're looking at the DNA of the animal and you have historic samples. So you're trying to learn about the animal's history from its DNA. Why would it be useful to look into an animal's past if your goal is the conservation of the future?
That's a really great question. So looking at the DNA helps us understand the evolutionary history of each individual. In the case of my research, I look at the entirety of the DNA, so that's called the whole genome. And it can give us insights into where these animals came from, whether they've experienced inbreeding in their ancestry, and roughly how long ago that inbreeding occurred. And also give us an idea whether evolution has resulted in local adaptation. So for the populations I study, it may seem like a good idea to just add more caribou from another big population to try to reduce the inbreeding. But if those two groups have been on different evolutionary trajectories and experienced different pressures over time, it actually could be harmful to the Lake Superior caribou. So it's really important that we understand that inbreeding history and possible local adaptation. With the local adaptation, it could be interesting because these Lake Superior populations have a more southern distribution than the other caribou. So there maybe has been a chance for selection to pick traits that are more suitable to a warmer climate. And that could be really important because climate change is one of the biggest threats facing caribou across Canada.
So how does climate change impact the caribou? Is it because it changes their habitat or it changes like their behavior? How does that connect?
Yeah, so mainly that it changes the habitat. The number one biggest threat to caribou across Canada is really habitat destruction, but climate change being a secondary source so that some of the southern ranges are no longer tolerable. They have to move further north. Also, climate change can affect the food sources of caribou. So a lot of caribou eat lichen, which can only grow in really certain temperatures. And so with changing climate over time, that may be another threat.
Okay, so you mentioned human sort of like distribution or the human destruction of a habitat is causing declines in caribou or might be hurting them in some way. But when I think of caribou, I think of them living in like the majestic northern parts of Canada where there's not a lot of people. So how are humans influencing those habitats if there's not massive populations of them up north?
Yeah, so there definitely are tundra caribou up north that are on those huge vasts of open land that maybe haven't been as fragmented. But for boreal caribou that are located across the provinces, they're really sensitive to changes in the boreal forest. So when we cut lines through the boreal forest for logging or pipelines or to run power lines, that can really change the habitat. Boreal caribou rely on having really dense woods to be able to space out and hide from wolves when they're calving. Whereas the tundra caribou will all group together when they're calving and have their babies together as sort of a group social strategy. So with the boreal ones in the forest, they're a lot more sensitive to that fragmentation if it allows wolves to move through the woods or see them more easily. Another issue with fragmentation is that other species like deer and moose can actually do better in those fragmented habitats. So you can see an increase in those other prey species, which overall increases the wolf numbers. So it sort of becomes a double damage to the caribou, that they've lost critical habitat, but they're also facing higher predation pressure.
Wow, I had no idea that the behaviors of different types of caribou changed so drastically. That's really interesting. So you mentioned sort of at the beginning when we were asking about your research that sort of the end goal is to inform management and like long-term conservation planning. So what kind of actions do we need to see happening in order to protect these animals?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really think it comes down to protecting that key habitat. So the dense boreal forests, especially the old forests that haven't been fragmented yet, because they just really need that to avoid the wolves when they're calving. Another key component is understanding the evolutionary history of the various populations so that we can make informed decisions. So it's my hope that my research could help identify source populations that could be used for future translocations to reduce inbreeding, or maybe identify key habitat areas to protect as corridors for gene flow for these populations.
Wow, that's awesome. So it seems like this is such important work. And with the caribou being such sort of like an iconic symbol for Canadians, it makes me want to help. And I'm sure it makes our listeners want to help too. Is there any way for us to get involved or to help, like in any way?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really great that you feel motivated to help. And there are so many people who feel a strong connection to caribou and really want to prevent local extinctions. Unfortunately, what they really need is this undisturbed habitat, so it can't really be the responsibility of individual citizens. But we can advocate to government representatives to prioritize caribou conservation and protect critical habitat and old growth boreal forests.
Awesome. Okay, so it sounds like some more policy work needs to be put in place and maybe more push from the average citizen to get that policy work in place. So I asked this question to all of our guests and they've all been pretty cool so far. So what's been the best part of your research to date?
I would say I'm really lucky to work with some amazing collaborators and mentors, not just from Trent, but also the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources and from Environment and Climate Change Canada. So I think my research could have real value for conservation, especially because I've had the opportunity to work so closely with people in government monitoring and policy and management to get an idea of how to make my research more impactful. It's also been really wonderful to help out on other various projects just as a field tech through these opportunities. So I've been lucky to handle a lot of different animals like wild turkeys and bats and flying squirrels and saw-whet owls. So that's been really wonderful to just get that experience and enjoy a wide variety of animals and habitats.
Yeah, I find like the best part of like conservation research is the collaborations. You get to meet so many cool people and do so many cool things. It's always worth it.
Yeah, there's so many amazing projects out there. It's really just great to get a taste of what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. So if our listeners are interested in maybe like learning more about your research or reaching out to you, is there anywhere they can look?
Yeah, so the best place would probably be to look for my Twitter because that's what I update most frequently. So you can either look for my name, my full name, Kirsten Solmonson, or my handle at Kirsten, Kirsten, and then SOLS. Tricky that it's not Kristen, KRI. It does trip people up, so just be careful about that. I also have a personal webpage, which is just my full name, kirstensolmonson.wordpress.com. And if the listeners want to learn more about the Caribou Genomics Monitoring Project, which is a collaborative long-term research project for caribou across Canada, they can find the webpage at ecogenomicscanada.ca.
Awesome. And if anyone is too confused about the Kristen versus Kirsten conundrum and you still want to get in contact, you can always email Traill College, Traill@TrentU, and we'll forward you along to Kirsten and you guys can chat. So thank you so much for tuning in to the Traill Happy Box Hour, broadcasting through the facilities of Trent Radio at 92.7 CFFF FM. My name is Megan Ward, and we are joined today by Kirsten, and we look forward to chatting next week. Check out Traill College on Instagram for more #TrailWow content at Traill College. Kirsten, thanks so much for joining today.
Okay, it's been awesome. Thank you, Megan. I was so excited to be a guest. I love doing SciComm and outreach. And yeah, if anyone wants to hear more about the caribou, feel free to reach out to me.